Welcome aboard, weary traveller, to this gentle voyage through the rolling seas of history, where the creaking timbers and distant crash of waves will carry you toward peaceful rest. Tonight, we'll drift together through the daily rhythms of life aboard an 18th century pirate vessel, exploring the surprisingly mundane realities behind the romantic legends that have captured imaginations for centuries. Whether you're seeking refuge from a restless evening, or simply yearning for the soothing embrace of historical storytelling, I'm grateful you've chosen to join me on this tranquil journey through maritime history. Picture yourself standing on a weathered wooden dock in Port Royal, Jamaica, in the year 1715, as the Caribbean sun begins its descent toward the horizon. The air hangs thick with the scent of salt spray and tar, while seabirds cry overhead in their eternal dance above waters that shimmer like molten copper in the fading light. Before you stretches a vessel that embodies both freedom and danger, its black flag hanging limp in the evening calm. This is no merchant ship bound for London, with holds full of sugar and tobacco, nor a naval frigate bristling with cannon and rigid discipline. This is a pirate ship, and tonight we'll explore what life was truly like for the men who called such vessels home. The morning aboard our pirate ship begins not with the romantic image of swashbuckling adventures, but with the mundane realities that governed every aspect of maritime existence. As dawn breaks across the Caribbean waters, the first sounds to pierce the tropical air are not the clash of cutlasses or the boom of cannon, but rather the gentle creaking of rope and timber as the vessel responds to the ocean's eternal rhythm. The ship rocks with a hypnotic motion that becomes as natural as breathing to those who spend their lives upon the waves, each rise and fall marking time in a world where clocks hold little meaning and the sun serves as the primary timekeeper. Our vessel stretches perhaps 100 feet from bow to stern, her hull painted black to better conceal her movements in the pre-dawn darkness that often accompanies raids upon unsuspecting merchant vessels. The main deck spreads before us like a wooden plaza, its planks worn smooth by countless bare feet and polished by the endless cycle of salt spray and tropical sun. Above, 3 masts reach toward the sky like ancient trees, their rigging creating a complex web of rope and canvas that requires constant attention from skilled hands who understand the delicate balance between wind and sail that propels their floating world through the vast expanse of ocean. The crew begins to stir as the first mate makes his rounds, his footsteps echoing across the deck with the authority of a man who has earned his position through years of experience navigating both treacherous waters and equally dangerous personalities. These are not the pressed men who serve aboard naval vessels against their will, nor the indentured servants who labour under harsh masters on merchant ships. These are volunteers who have chosen this life for reasons as varied as the men themselves, united by their rejection of conventional society and their willingness to embrace uncertainty in exchange for the promise of freedom and fortune. The cook emerges from his cramped galley below decks, carrying with him the aroma of hardtack and salted pork that will constitute the morning meal for nearly 60 souls who call this vessel home. His domain occupies a space no larger than a modern closet, yet from this tiny kingdom he manages to produce meals that sustain men through weeks of ocean travel and the occasional fierce battle that punctuates their otherwise routine existence. The galley fire burns in a carefully constructed box filled with sand, its flames providing not only heat for cooking, but also warmth during the surprisingly cool nights that descend upon tropical waters, when the sun disappears beyond the horizon. Water barrels line the lower decks like sentinels, each one representing precious days of survival in a world where fresh water proves more valuable than gold or silver. The crew monitors these supplies with religious devotion, understanding that their carefully rationed contents mean the difference between life and death, should they find themselves becalmed for extended periods or forced to flee pursuing naval vessels without opportunity to replenish their stores. Each man receives his daily ration in a wooden cup that serves as both drinking vessel and personal treasure. Often carved with initials or simple decorations that transform utilitarian objects into expressions of individual identity. The sleeping quarters below deck stretch before us in a cavern of hanging hammocks that sway gently with the ship's motion, creating a forest of canvas and rope that houses the dreams and nightmares of men who have chosen to live beyond the reach of conventional law. These hammocks, suspended from the overhead beams, provide the only private space available to ordinary crew members, though privacy itself becomes a relative concept when 60 men share an area smaller than most modern apartments. Personal possessions remain few by necessity, consisting primarily of extra clothing, weapons, and small tokens that connect these wanderers to distant memories of homes they may never see again. The ship's articles, written in careful script and signed by every member of the crew, govern daily life with rules that might surprise those who imagine pirate vessels as realms of pure chaos and lawlessness. These documents establish everything from the division of captured treasure to the punishment for theft among crew members, creating a democratic system that stands in stark contrast to the rigid hierarchies that define naval and merchant vessels of the era. Decisions affecting the entire crew require majority vote, while the captain's authority extends primarily to matters of navigation and combat, making these floating communities among the most egalitarian societies of their time. The daily routine begins with the inspection of rigging and sails, as the survival of every soul aboard depends upon the vessel's ability to harness wind and current for both escape and pursuit. Experienced sailors move through this ritual with practiced efficiency, their hands reading tension and wear through touch alone, identifying problems before they can develop into catastrophes that might leave them helpless upon an unforgiving ocean. The tropical sun beats down mercilessly upon men who work shirtless under its relentless gaze, their skin bronzed and scarred by years of exposure to salt spray and Caribbean weather that can shift from calm to violent with little warning. The quartermaster emerges from his cabin carrying the leather-bound ledger that records every aspect of shipboard life, from the distribution of food and water to the accounting of captured prizes that will eventually be divided among the crew according to their predetermined shares. His position requires both mathematical skill and diplomatic ability, as he must balance the competing interests of men who have little patience for unfairness, while maintaining the detailed records that ensure survival in a world where miscalculation can prove fatal. The morning watch scans the horizon through telescopes that extend their vision far beyond the natural limits of human sight, searching for the telltale signs of other vessels that might represent either opportunity or danger. Merchant ships appear as tiny white specks against the blue expanse, their sails catching sunlight like distant beacons that announce the presence of potential prey. Naval frigates present a more ominous sight, their military precision and superior firepower making them adversaries to be avoided rather than engaged, except under the most favourable circumstances. The crew's diverse origins become apparent as the morning unfolds, with accents and languages reflecting the international character of piracy during this golden age of maritime lawlessness. Former sailors from the Royal Navy work alongside escaped slaves from Caribbean plantations, while displaced farmers from Scotland share deck space with adventurers from London's crowded streets. Their reasons for choosing this life vary as widely as their backgrounds, yet they find common ground in their rejection of conventional society's limitations and their willingness to embrace uncertainty in pursuit of freedom and fortune. The ship's carpenter begins his daily inspection of the hull, searching for signs of damage that might compromise their vessel's integrity during the violent storms that periodically sweep across Caribbean waters with devastating force. His skilled hands probe seams and joints with the delicate touch of a physician examining a patient, understanding that even small problems can rapidly expand into catastrophic failures when subjected to the enormous stresses of ocean travel and combat. The smell of pine tar and oakum fills the air as he performs routine maintenance that keeps their floating world seaworthy through months of constant use. The gentle rhythm of waves against the hull creates a natural lullaby that has soothed countless sailors through peaceful nights and anxious dawns, while the distant cry of seabirds reminds all aboard that land exists somewhere beyond their watery horizon. This is the world of the 18th century pirate, where survival depends upon skill, courage, and the bonds of brotherhood forged in the crucible of shared danger and common purpose. The midday sun reaches its zenith as our vessel continues its endless dance with the Caribbean currents, and the crew settles into the unhurried rhythm that defines life between the dramatic moments of pursuit and plunder. The deck grows warm beneath bare feet as men seek whatever shade the rigging and sails might provide, their movements slow and deliberate in the tropical heat that transforms even simple tasks into exercises in endurance. This is the time when the romantic notions of pirate life give way to the simple reality of maritime existence, where patience becomes as valuable a skill as swordsmanship or seamanship. The sailmaker spreads his canvas across a section of deck, his weathered hands working needle and thread with the precision of an artist creating a masterpiece. Each stitch must withstand the tremendous forces that ocean winds can generate, while tiers and worn sections receive careful attention that may determine whether the ship can outrun pursuing vessels when speed becomes a matter of survival. His workspace becomes a classroom where younger crew members learn the essential skills of canvas repair, understanding that their lives may one day depend upon their ability to mend torn sails in the midst of a violent storm or desperate chase. Below deck, the surgeon tends to his collection of instruments and medicines, though his title often reflects optimism rather than formal training. Most ship's doctors learn their craft through grim necessity rather than university study, their knowledge gained through treating injuries that range from rope burns and splinter wounds to the more serious consequences of cutlass fights and musket balls. His quarters contain a small but precious collection of herbs and powders, many acquired through trade with Spanish settlements or captured from merchant vessels, whose medical supplies represent treasure as valuable as gold to men who live constantly on the edge of injury and disease. The afternoon watch brings its own particular drowsiness as the sun's heat combines with the gentle motion of the waves to create an atmosphere conducive to rest and contemplation. Men gather in small groups to share stories of past adventures, their tales growing more elaborate with each telling until fact and fiction blend into the kind of mythology that transforms ordinary criminals into legendary figures. These narratives serve multiple purposes beyond simple entertainment, preserving important information about navigation routes, safe harbours, and the habits of potential victims while reinforcing the bonds of loyalty that hold their floating community together. The ship's musician emerges with his fiddle, the simple wooden instrument representing one of the few luxuries permitted aboard a vessel where every cubic inch of space serves a practical purpose. His melodies drift across the deck like invisible threads, connecting present moments to distant memories of taverns and celebrations in ports scattered across the Caribbean. The music provides emotional release for men who must often suppress feelings of homesickness and uncertainty, while familiar songs create temporary bridges to the conventional world they have left behind. The cook prepares the afternoon meal in his cramped galley, where innovation born of necessity transforms limited ingredients into sustenance that maintains both physical health and crew morale. Salted meat requires careful preparation to remove excess salt while retaining flavour, while hardtack biscuits often harbour weevils that must be removed or ignored depending upon the availability of alternatives. Fresh fruit remains a rare luxury, obtained only through raids on coastal settlements or trade with friendly vessels. Yet its importance to preventing scurvy makes it worth almost any risk or expense. The captain's cabin stands apart from the common areas like a small palace within their floating kingdom, its windows providing panoramic views of the endless ocean that surrounds them. Charts cover every available surface, their detailed markings representing accumulated knowledge of currents, depths, and hazards gathered through years of careful observation and sometimes painful experience. His private quarters contain the only real furniture aboard the vessel, including a table sturdy enough to support maps and instruments while providing a stable surface for the calculations that determine their course through trackless waters. The afternoon brings the ritual of checking position and plotting course, a process that combines scientific measurement with educated guesswork in an era when navigation remains as much art as science. The ship's navigator uses simple instruments to measure the sun's angle, while his understanding of currents and wind patterns helps determine their location relative to known landmarks that may lie beyond the horizon. Dead reckoning becomes a crucial skill when clouds obscure celestial references, requiring careful attention to speed, direction, and elapsed time to maintain awareness of their position in the vast expanse of ocean. The crew's personal hygiene receives attention during these quiet hours, though privacy remains a luxury unavailable to common sailors who must conduct their ablutions in full view of their shipmates. Seawater serves for washing both bodies and clothing, while freshwater reserves remain too precious to waste on anything beyond drinking and cooking. The tropical climate makes regular bathing essential for health, yet the salt content of their impromptu bath water leaves skin feeling tight and clothing stiff with crystalline deposits that accumulate over time. The afternoon watch rotation brings fresh eyes to the task of scanning horizons for signs of other vessels, while tired lookouts descend from their perches in the rigging to rest in whatever shade they can find. The crow's nest provides the best vantage point for spotting distant sails, yet the constant motion of the ship makes extended periods aloft a test of both balance and endurance. Those who serve as lookouts develop an almost supernatural ability to distinguish between different types of vessels at extreme distances, reading subtle differences in sail configuration and hull shape that reveal whether approaching ships represent opportunity or danger. The ship's carpenter continues his eternal battle against the forces that constantly work to return their vessel to the ocean floor, using tar and oakum to seal seams while replacing worn timbers with materials salvaged from captured prizes or cut from tropical hardwoods found on remote islands. His workshop occupies a corner of the lower deck, where the sounds of saw and hammer create a steady rhythm that speaks of ongoing maintenance and repair. Every piece of wood aboard the ship serves multiple purposes, from structural support to emergency fuel for the galley fire, making conservation and careful use essential skills for extended voyages. The afternoon heat brings drowsiness that settles over the crew like a warm blanket, encouraging rest and quiet conversation, while the ship maintains its steady progress across waters that stretch endlessly in every direction. This is the peaceful face of pirate life, far removed from the violent confrontations and desperate chases that capture public imagination, but occupy only small portions of their actual existence. The majority of their time passes in this gentle rhythm of maintenance, navigation, and patient waiting for opportunities that may appear without warning on the distant horizon. The sun begins its slow descent toward the western horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and crimson that reflect across the water's surface like liquid fire. This daily transformation never loses its power to inspire wonder among men who witness it from their unique vantage point upon the open ocean, where no mountains or buildings obstruct their view of the celestial drama that unfolds each evening. The changing light signals the approach of night and the shift to evening routines that will carry them through the hours of darkness, when different dangers and opportunities emerge from the shadows. The evening meal becomes a communal ritual that transforms their floating world from a workplace into something resembling a family gathering, though the bonds that unite these men spring from shared danger rather than blood. The cook's call echoes across the deck, summoning crew members from their various tasks to receive their portions of salted pork and ship's biscuit, supplemented when fortune allows by fresh fish caught during the day's sailing. The simple act of sharing food creates moments of genuine camaraderie among men who might otherwise view each other as potential competitors for limited resources and uncertain rewards. Wooden bowls and pewter spoons emerge from personal sea chests as crew members gather in small groups across the deck, their conversations flowing in the easy manner of men who have learned to find comfort in routine despite the unpredictable nature of their chosen profession. The quartermaster moves among them with his ledger, carefully noting the consumption of supplies while listening to complaints and suggestions that help maintain the delicate balance between authority and democracy that keeps their community functioning despite its outlaw status. The ship's cat, a battle-scarred veteran of countless voyages, weaves between seated figures in search of scraps and attention, his presence serving practical purposes beyond companionship as he wages eternal war against the rats that would otherwise consume precious food stores and damage vital rigging. His independent spirit and survival instincts make him an fitting mascot for men who share similar traits, while his ability to sense approaching weather changes has saved countless vessels from storms that might have caught their crews unprepared. As darkness settles over the Caribbean waters like a velvet curtain studded with countless diamonds, the ship's lanterns cast pools of warm light that create intimate spaces within the larger vessel. The watch schedule changes with sunset, bringing fresh eyes and alert minds to the task of maintaining security during the vulnerable hours when enemy vessels might approach under cover of darkness, while their prey sleeps peacefully beneath tropical stars that have guided countless generations of sailors across these same waters. The evening watch begins their careful patrol of the ship's perimeter, their footsteps muffled by years of practice in moving silently across wooden decks that might betray their presence to hostile ears during the tense moments that precede dawn raids on unsuspecting settlements. Each man carries weapons chosen for both effectiveness and silence, understanding that their survival often depends upon approaching targets without triggering premature alarms that could transform profitable raids into desperate battles against prepared defenders. Below deck, off-duty crew members settle into their hammocks with the practiced efficiency of men who have learned to maximize comfort within the constraints imposed by limited space and constantly moving surroundings. Personal rituals emerge as each sailor prepares for sleep in his own particular way, some reading from worn books by candlelight, while others sharpen knives or tend to small personal projects that help maintain connections to the skills and interests that defined their lives before they chose the uncertainty of piracy over the predictable hardships of conventional employment. The ship's library, though modest by any standard, represents a treasure trove of knowledge and entertainment for men whose formal education often ended at an early age due to economic necessity or family circumstances. Navigation manuals share shelf space with collections of poetry and adventure tales, while medical texts provide essential information for treating injuries that cannot wait for the services of qualified physicians who rarely venture into waters controlled by outlaw vessels. The gentle creaking of timbers and rigging creates a natural symphony that lulls tired minds toward rest while the ship continues its eternal dance with wind and current. This wooden world responds to every change in weather and sea condition, with subtle movements that become as familiar as breathing to those who spend months at a time within its confines. The vessel's voice speaks in groans and whispers that experienced sailors learn to interpret as clearly as spoken language, warning of stress points and structural concerns that require immediate attention. The night watch maintains their vigilant survey of surrounding waters, while most of their shipmates surrender to the exhaustion that comes from long days of physical labor under tropical sun. The darkness transforms their environment completely, reducing their world to the small circle of visibility provided by ship's lanterns while expanding their other senses to compensate for the loss of sight. Sounds carry differently across water at night, with distant voices and unfamiliar noises requiring careful evaluation to distinguish between harmless phenomena and potential threats that might endanger their floating sanctuary. The navigator emerges from the captain's cabin carrying his collection of instruments and charts, preparing for the evening's celestial observations that will help determine their position relative to known landmarks and safe harbours. The stars serve as a vast natural compass for those who understand their movements, while the moon's phases provide crucial information for planning raids that require darkness for concealment or bright nights for navigation through treacherous coastal waters where hidden reefs and sandbars wait to claim unwary vessels. The cook banks his galley fire with practiced care, understanding that maintaining controlled flame throughout the night provides both security and convenience while minimizing the risk of catastrophic accidents that could destroy their entire world within minutes. The small box of sand that contains his cooking fire represents one of the most carefully guarded elements aboard the vessel, as its loss would reduce them to cold meals and potentially fatal vulnerability during extended voyages far from sources of replacement fuel. Personal conversations continue in hushed tones as crew members share stories, concerns, and dreams that help maintain their psychological well-being during the isolation that defines life aboard ships sailing beyond the reach of conventional society. These intimate exchanges create emotional bonds that often prove stronger than family ties, forged in the crucible of shared danger and mutual dependence that transforms diverse individuals into cohesive fighting units capable of facing overwhelming odds with confidence born of absolute trust in their companions. The ship's officers conduct their evening rounds with quiet authority, checking security arrangements and crew welfare, while maintaining the careful balance between leadership and fellowship that prevents their democratic community from dissolving into chaos during moments of crisis. The captain's authority remains absolute during combat and navigation emergencies, yet his power derives from respect earned through demonstrated competence, rather than fear imposed through brutal discipline that characterizes naval vessels of the era. The gentle motion of waves against the hull creates a hypnotic rhythm that has soothed countless sailors through peaceful nights and anxious vigils, while the vast expanse of stars overhead reminds all aboard of their tiny place within an infinite universe that cares nothing for human ambitions or fears. This perspective provides both humility and comfort to men who have chosen to live by their wits and courage, in a world where conventional rules hold no meaning, and survival depends upon adaptability rather than social status or inherited privilege. The night air carries scents of salt and tar mixed with the faint aroma of tropical islands that may lie beyond their visual horizon, tantalizing reminders of the solid ground that most land dwellers take for granted, but which represents precious sanctuary to those whose lives depend upon maintaining their wooden world in proper condition, despite the constant assault of wind, water, and time. The ocean's immensity becomes particularly apparent during these quiet hours, when the absence of visual references reduces their universe to the small circle of lamplight that defines their temporary home. The evening's final meal consists of whatever provisions remain from the day's rations, often supplemented by fresh fish caught during idle hours when no other vessels appeared on their hunting grounds. The art of fishing from a moving vessel requires skills developed through necessity rather than leisure, as protein sources beyond salted meat help prevent the nutritional deficiencies that can devastate crews during extended voyages when fresh supplies become unavailable for weeks at a time. As the night deepens and most of the crew settles into the peaceful rhythm of sleep, the watch maintains their careful surveillance of surrounding waters while their shipmates dream of distant shores and half-remembered homes that grow more mythical with each passing month. The ship continues its eternal journey across waters that have carried countless vessels toward destinies both glorious and tragic, while the gentle sounds of wind and wave create the perfect lullaby for those who have learned to find rest within the embrace of the endless sea. The midnight hours bring a different quality to life aboard our pirate vessel, as the ship settles into the profound quiet that only comes when most of its human cargo has surrendered to exhaustion. The skeleton crew maintaining the night watch moves with deliberate care across decks made treacherous by darkness and the ever-present moisture that accumulates on wooden surfaces exposed to tropical air. Their soft-soled shoes whisper against planking, worn smooth by countless passages, while their eyes strain against the gloom to distinguish between the familiar shadows of rigging and the potential threat of unfamiliar shapes that might signal approaching danger. The helmsman stands like a statue at his post, his weathered hands gripping the wheel with the unconscious skill of decades spent reading the ocean's moods, through the subtle vibrations that travel up through keel and timber into his very bones. His position requires not only the physical strength to maintain course against contrary winds and currents, but also the mental endurance to remain alert through long hours, when fatigue whispers seductive suggestions of momentary inattention that could send their vessel onto hidden reefs or into the path of hostile ships that hunt under cover of darkness. Below decks, the rhythmic breathing of sleeping men creates a gentle chorus that rises and falls with the ship's motion, while the occasional snore or muttered dream word punctuates the otherwise peaceful atmosphere. The hammocks sway in perfect synchronization with the vessel's movements, their occupants having long ago learned to surrender their bodies to the ocean's eternal dance, rather than fighting against forces far greater than human will. Personal possessions hang from hooks and nails driven into the overhead beams, creating a constellation of small treasures that represent the accumulated wealth and memories of men who carry their entire worldly goods within the confines of a single sea chest. The ship's rats emerge from their daytime hiding places to begin their nocturnal foraging, their tiny claws scratching against wood and rope as they navigate pathways known only to themselves through the vessel's hidden spaces. These unwelcome passengers represent a constant challenge to crew and stores alike, consuming precious food while gnawing through rigging that might fail at crucial moments if their damage goes undetected. The eternal battle between human inhabitants and rodent invaders continues through every hour of every day, with neither side achieving permanent victory in their struggle for control of limited resources. The galley fire glows like a tiny beacon in the ship's belly, its carefully banked coals providing warmth that radiates through the surrounding timber while offering the promise of hot food when morning returns. The cook's domain remains sacred territory even during the night hours, as his stores of flour and salt meat represent the difference between survival and starvation during extended voyages when no opportunities arise for replenishment. His personal hammock hangs within arm's reach of his cooking area, allowing him to respond quickly to any emergency that might threaten his carefully maintained supplies. The ship's medicine chest occupies a place of honor in the surgeon's quarters, its brass fittings gleaming dully in the lamplight, while its contents represent hope for those who suffer injury or illness far from the reach of qualified physicians. Bottles of rum serve double duty as both antiseptic and painkiller, while crude surgical instruments wait in readiness for procedures that might mean the difference between recovery and death for crew members whose survival depends entirely upon their shipmates' willingness to provide care during moments of greatest vulnerability. The captain's cabin remains illuminated throughout the night, its windows casting rectangles of golden light across the dark waters while he studies charts and weather patterns that will determine their course through the coming days. His private collection of books includes not only navigation manuals and maritime law, but also volumes of poetry and philosophy that help maintain his intellectual connection to the civilized world he has chosen to reject. The weight of command sits heavily upon his shoulders during these solitary hours, when decisions made in the privacy of his quarters will affect the fate of every soul aboard his vessel. Navigation instruments rest in their appointed places like sleeping sentinels, their brass and wood construction representing centuries of accumulated knowledge about the art of finding one's way across trackless oceans. The compass needle quivers with each movement of the ship, while maintaining its unwavering dedication to magnetic north, providing a constant reference point in a world where all other landmarks disappear beyond the horizon. Sandglasses mark the passage of time with grains that fall as steadily as the seconds of mortality, their turning providing the only reliable chronometer available to sailors who must calculate their position through careful observation of celestial movements. The night air carries sounds that daytime activities normally mask, allowing the watch to hear distant phenomena that might indicate the presence of other vessels or approaching weather changes. The splash of dolphins playing in their wake creates a cheerful counterpoint to the more serious business of maintaining security, while the cry of night-flying seabirds suggests the proximity of land that may offer opportunities for resupply or refuge. Every unusual sound requires investigation, as the difference between harmless wildlife and human activity often determines whether dawn will bring continued safety or desperate combat. Personal hygiene becomes even more challenging during the dark hours, when privacy remains impossible and fresh water too precious to waste on anything beyond essential drinking needs. The crew has developed ingenious methods for maintaining cleanliness using seawater and whatever soap can be manufactured from fat and ashes, though the salt content leaves skin feeling tight and clothing stiff with crystalline deposits. Dental care relies primarily on chewing fibrous plant materials when available, supplemented by crude tooth powders made from burned shells and herbs that help combat the effects of limited diet and poor nutrition. The ship's carpentry shop falls silent during night hours, though the smell of wood shavings and pine tar continues to permeate the surrounding areas where emergency repairs might be needed at any moment. Hand tools hang from their appointed hooks like sleeping implements, waiting for dawn to bring new challenges that will test both the vessel's structural integrity and the craftsman's skill at maintaining seaworthiness despite constant exposure to forces that seek to return their wooden world to its constituent elements. Spare timber lies carefully secured against the ship's motion, each piece representing potential salvation should battle damage or storm stress require immediate replacement of critical structural components. The crew's personal weapons receive careful attention even during rest periods, as the sudden appearance of enemy vessels might require instant readiness for combat that leaves no time for preparation. Cutlasses hang from belts even while their owners sleep, their familiar weight providing psychological comfort to men who understand that survival often depends upon the speed with which they can transition from peaceful slumber to deadly efficiency. Pistols require daily maintenance to prevent the tropical humidity from rendering their firing mechanisms unreliable during moments when hesitation might prove fatal. The ship's water barrels stand like silent guardians of life itself, their precious contents representing more value than any treasure that might be captured through successful raids on merchant vessels. The crew monitors these supplies with religious devotion, understanding that careful rationing means the difference between completing their voyage and dying of thirst within sight of a land that remains tantalizingly beyond their reach. Each barrel bears careful markings that indicate its contents and the date when it was filled, while regular inspection ensures that contamination or leakage receives immediate attention. The night watch rotation brings fresh eyes to the task of maintaining security, while allowing tired sentries to seek whatever rest they can find during off-duty hours. The crow's nest becomes an island of solitude high above the deck, where lookouts must maintain alertness despite the hypnotic motion of the ship and the soporific effects of tropical warmth. Those who serve in this capacity develop almost supernatural ability to detect distant sails or unusual weather patterns that might affect their vessel's safety during the vulnerable hours when most of the crew lies helpless in sleep. Below-deck storage areas contain the accumulated treasure and supplies that represent months of successful piracy, their contents carefully catalogued by the quartermaster, who maintains detailed records of everything from captured silver to barrels of gunpowder. These cramped spaces require constant monitoring to prevent spoilage or theft, while their organization determines how quickly essential items can be located during emergencies, when seconds might determine the outcome of life or death situations. Personal sea chests occupy whatever space their owners can claim, each one containing the worldly possessions and mementos that connect these wandering souls to the lives they left behind. The ship's rigging sings a gentle song as wind passes through the complex web of rope and canvas that propels their vessel across endless waters. Each line serves multiple purposes beyond its primary function, providing emergency materials for repairs while creating the three-dimensional puzzle that experienced sailors navigate with unconscious skill during both calm weather and violent storms. The maintenance of this aerial network requires constant attention from crew members who understand that their lives depend upon the integrity of every splice and knot that holds their world together against forces that never cease their assault. The galley stores contain not only food, but also the herbs and spices that transform monotonous rations into meals that provide both nutrition and morale-boosting variety. The cook's knowledge of preservation techniques determines how long fresh provisions remain edible in tropical heat, while his creativity in combining limited ingredients often means the difference between satisfied crew members and potential mutiny born of culinary desperation. His reputation for producing palatable meals from unpromising materials makes him one of the most valuable members of the entire company, regardless of his prowess with weapons or seamanship. The ship's library grows slowly through acquisitions from captured vessels, each new volume representing a window into worlds beyond their immediate experience of salt spray and endless horizons. Books serve multiple purposes beyond entertainment, providing practical knowledge about navigation, medicine, and foreign languages that might prove essential during encounters with vessels from distant nations. The ability to read sets certain crew members apart as valuable resources for gathering intelligence from captured documents or conducting negotiations with educated prisoners whose cooperation might be secured through intellectual rather than physical persuasion. Personal correspondence fills small corners of sea chests with letters that may never be delivered to distant recipients who grow more mythical with each passing month. These carefully preserved communications represent emotional anchors to the conventional world that most crew members have abandoned, while their composition provides therapeutic release for feelings that cannot be safely expressed within the confines of their floating community. The act of writing maintains connections to literacy and civilized behavior that might otherwise atrophy during extended periods of lawless existence. The night air grows cooler as tropical temperatures moderate with the sun's absence, providing relief from the oppressive heat that makes daytime labor a test of endurance for men whose pale European complexions struggle against Caribbean intensity. This daily cycle of heating and cooling creates its own rhythm within the ship's wooden structure, causing timbers to expand and contract in patterns that experienced sailors learn to recognize as normal settling rather than signs of structural damage that might require immediate attention. The vessel's cats emerge from their hiding places to begin nocturnal hunting expeditions that help control the rodent population while providing entertainment for crew members who appreciate their independent spirits and survival instincts. These feline crew members earn their keep through dedicated pest control while serving as early warning systems for changes in weather or the approach of other vessels that their sensitive hearing might detect long before human senses register any unusual activity. As the deep night hours pass with measured slowness, the ship continues its patient progress across waters that have carried countless vessels toward destinies both glorious and tragic. The gentle sounds of wind and wave create nature's own lullaby for those who have learned to find peace within the endless embrace of the ocean, while the steady rhythm of the watch maintains security for sleepers who trust their lives to the vigilance of companions, whose loyalty has been forged in the crucible of shared danger and mutual dependence that transforms individual outcasts into cohesive communities capable of facing any challenge the sea might offer. The pre-dawn hours bring a different quality to the Caribbean darkness, as the first mate begins his quiet rounds through the ship's various levels, checking on sleeping crew members while ensuring that all security measures remain properly maintained. His footsteps echo softly against wooden planking as he navigates familiar pathways by touch and memory, his presence providing reassurance to any who might stir from uneasy dreams filled with memories of battles fought and treasures won. The responsibility of maintaining order during these vulnerable hours weighs heavily upon his shoulders, as he understands that a single moment of inattention could transform their peaceful sanctuary into a scene of chaos and destruction. The ship's bell remains silent during these quiet hours, its bronze voice reserved for marking formal watch changes and emergency signals that might summon every available hand to face whatever crisis threatens their floating world. Instead, Time passes with the gentle rhythm of waves against the hull and the soft creaking of timber responding to ocean swells that have travelled thousands of miles from distant storms to rock their vessel in its eternal cradle. The absence of mechanical timepieces makes these natural rhythms all the more precious, as they provide the only reliable measure of duration in a world where days blend seamlessly into nights and weeks dissolve into months of endless maritime existence. Below deck, the surgeon checks on crew members who suffer from the various ailments that plague men living in close quarters under challenging conditions. Tropical diseases present constant threats to health and morale, while injuries sustained during routine shipboard activities require ongoing attention to prevent infection and complications that could prove fatal without proper care. His limited medical supplies must be carefully rationed to ensure availability during emergencies, making prevention through cleanliness and proper diet as important as treatment in maintaining crew welfare throughout extended voyages. The ship's stores of rum serve purposes beyond simple recreation, as alcohol provides essential antiseptic properties for treating wounds while offering temporary relief from the chronic pain that accompanies life aboard vessels where every surface presents opportunities for injury. The quartermaster monitors these precious supplies with careful attention, understanding that their distribution affects both medical treatment and crew morale during the long periods between successful raids that replenish their reserves. Each ration must balance immediate needs against future requirements, creating ongoing tension between present comfort and potential survival necessities. The cook's assistant tends the banked galley fire with religious devotion, adding fuel with careful precision to maintain optimal temperature while preventing flare-ups that might attract unwanted attention from distant vessels whose intentions remain unknown. His knowledge of fire management represents crucial skills that determine whether the crew enjoys hot meals or faces the monotony of cold rations during periods when circumstances prevent normal cooking activities. The small galley space requires constant organization to prevent accidents that could destroy their entire food supply within minutes of careless handling. Personal relationships among crew members take on particular importance during the isolation of night watches, when small groups gather to share stories and concerns that help maintain psychological health during extended periods without contact with the outside world. These intimate conversations create bonds that often prove stronger than blood relationships, forged through shared experiences that conventional society cannot understand or appreciate. Trust becomes absolute necessity when survival depends upon the willingness of companions to risk their own lives for mutual protection and support. The ship's musical instruments rest silently in their appointed places, waiting for evening gatherings when melodies provide emotional release for men whose daily existence offers little opportunity for artistic expression. A worn fiddle hangs carefully secured against the vessel's motion, its strings loosened to prevent breakage, while its wooden body bears the scars of countless voyages through calm seas and violent storms. Music serves therapeutic purposes beyond entertainment, helping crew members process emotions and memories that might otherwise overwhelm psychological defenses already strained by the constant stress of outlaw existence. The night air carries subtle changes in temperature and humidity that experienced sailors learn to interpret as early warnings of approaching weather systems that might affect their safety during the coming day. Cloud formations, invisible in darkness, nevertheless influence atmospheric pressure and wind patterns that sensitive individuals can detect through instinctive awareness developed during years of ocean travel. These natural forecasting abilities often prove more reliable than primitive instruments in predicting conditions that determine whether morning will bring continued calm or the necessity for emergency preparations. The ship's supply of candles and lamp oil represents another precious resource that must be carefully managed to ensure availability for essential activities while preventing wasteful consumption during routine operations. The flickering flames that provide illumination create small islands of warmth and security within the vast darkness that surrounds their vessel, while their careful placement helps prevent accidents that could ignite the wooden structure and destroy everything they have worked to preserve. Each flame requires constant attention to prevent dangerous situations while maximizing the utility of limited fuel supplies. Personal hygiene routines adapted to shipboard conditions reflect the ingenuity that maritime life demands from those who must maintain health and cleanliness, despite severe limitations on fresh water and privacy. Seawater serves for washing both bodies and clothing, though its salt content creates challenges that require innovative solutions developed through trial and error over countless voyages. The crew has learned to supplement harsh saltwater bathing with whatever fresh rainwater can be collected during tropical downpours that periodically refresh their environment, while testing their ability to secure essential supplies under adverse conditions. The ship's armory occupies secure storage space below deck, where weapons and ammunition await the moment when peaceful commerce transforms into deadly combat without warning or preparation time. Muskets require constant maintenance to prevent tropical humidity from compromising their reliability, while edged weapons need regular sharpening and oiling to maintain effectiveness during the brief, violent encounters that determine success or failure in their chosen profession. Each crew member bears personal responsibility for his equipment, understanding that mechanical failure during combat often proves fatal for both individual and community survival. The vessel's freshwater supplies undergo continuous monitoring to detect any signs of contamination that could devastate the crew through illness during periods when replacement sources remain unavailable for weeks at a time. Wooden barrels require regular inspection to ensure their integrity against leakage that might waste precious contents, while the water itself needs periodic testing to confirm its continued potability despite storage conditions that would challenge even the most carefully managed reserves. Each drop represents life itself to men whose survival depends entirely upon maintaining adequate hydration during exposure to tropical heat and salt spray. Navigation equipment rests in protective cases designed to shield delicate instruments from the moisture and shock that characterize maritime environments where precision measurements determine the difference between reaching safe harbor and wandering lost until supplies run out. Compasses require careful calibration to account for local magnetic variations that could lead vessels astray, while charts demand constant updating based on new information gathered through personal observation and intelligence acquired from captured vessels, whose navigators possess knowledge of previously unknown hazards and opportunities. The ship's carpenter maintains his workshop in constant readiness for emergency repairs that might be needed without warning when battle damage or storm stress threatens structural integrity. His collection of tools represents years of accumulated expertise in working with wood, under conditions that would challenge even experienced craftsmen operating in comfortable shore-based facilities. Each repair requires adaptation to available materials and workspace limitations that demand creative solutions for problems that conventional carpentry rarely encounters. The crew's personal possessions reflect their diverse backgrounds and individual personalities, creating a fascinating collection of mementos and practical items that tell stories of lives lived beyond conventional boundaries. Religious artifacts provide spiritual comfort for those who maintain faith despite their outlaw status, while practical items such as sewing supplies and writing materials enable maintenance of civilized habits that help preserve connections to the conventional world they have chosen to reject. The Night Watch maintains careful observation of celestial movements that provide essential information for navigation while offering psychological comfort through their eternal constancy in a world where everything else remains subject to sudden change. Star positions help determine approximate location and direction of travel, while the moon's phases affect visibility conditions that influence both hunting opportunities and defensive preparations. These natural timepieces connect maritime travelers to rhythms far older than human civilization, providing perspective on their temporary existence within vast cosmic patterns. The ship's rats continue their nocturnal foraging expeditions through spaces known only to themselves, their activities creating constant background noise that experienced sailors learn to distinguish from more threatening sounds that might indicate external dangers. These unwelcome passengers consume precious food supplies while potentially damaging essential equipment, Yet their presence also serves as an early warning system for changes in ship's condition that might affect structural integrity or cargo security. As the deepest hours of night gradually give way to the first subtle signs of approaching dawn, the vessel continues its patient progress across waters that stretch endlessly toward horizons that promise both opportunity and danger in equal measure. The gentle rhythm of waves against the hull provides natural percussion for the symphony of shipboard sounds that has become as familiar as breathing to those who call this floating world home, while the vast canopy of stars overhead offers silent testimony to the countless generations of sailors who have found their way across these same waters through courage, skill, and unwavering trust in the bonds that unite them against whatever challenges the sea might offer. And so, dear companion of this gentle voyage, as the first pale whispers of dawn begin to touch the eastern horizon and our 18th century pirates prepare for another day upon the endless Caribbean waters, we find ourselves reaching the end of our peaceful journey through maritime history. We have drifted together through the surprisingly ordinary rhythms that defined life aboard these legendary vessels, discovering that behind the romantic tales of swashbuckling adventure lay the simple human realities of men seeking freedom, brotherhood, and survival upon the vast ocean that cradled their wooden world. From the morning routines of checking rigging and rationing water to the quiet midnight watches beneath star-filled skies, we have witnessed how these maritime communities created order within chaos, democracy within lawlessness, and family bonds among strangers united by their rejection of conventional society. The gentle creaking of timbers and whisper of waves against the hull have carried us through their daily existence, revealing lives far more complex and human than legend suggests. May the soothing rhythm of their eternal voyage across Caribbean waters carry you now toward your own peaceful rest, understanding that even in humanity's most adventurous chapters, it was often the quiet moments of shared meals, careful maintenance, and patient waiting that truly defined their experience. Sleep well, knowing that somewhere beyond the horizon of dreams, their wooden world continues its endless dance with wind and wave, while the bonds of brotherhood forged in salt spray and tropical starlight endure as testament to the enduring human spirit that finds home even upon the restless sea.